everyone, welcome back to English Vibes. I'm Jessica. Today's episode is a little different. Liam isn't joining me this time. It's just going to be me today. I wanted to do a solo episode because today's topic is something I'm really passionate about, and I wanted to explain it properly without rushing through it. So today we're talking about listening. Specifically, why listening should be the very first skill you focus on if you want to master English. A lot of learners jump straight into grammar books or vocabulary lists, but I want to show you why that's actually not where you should start. So get comfortable, grab your drink, and let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the big question. Why listening? Why not grammar? Why not vocabulary lists? The answer actually comes from how our brains naturally learn language. Think about how you learned your first language as a child. Nobody handed you a grammar book. Nobody made you memorize vocabulary lists. Instead, you listened. For months, maybe even years. You listened to your parents, your family, the people around you talking constantly. And only after a long period of listening did you start speaking. This is actually how our brain is wired to acquire language. Listening comes first. Always. There's a concept in language learning called the silent period. This is a stage where learners absorb a huge amount of input through listening before they're ready to produce their own speech. Many adult learners feel embarrassed about this stage. They feel like they should be speaking right away, or they're falling behind somehow. But honestly, this stage is not a weakness. It's actually a sign that your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And here's the important part. Skipping this stage doesn't make you learn faster. It actually makes learning harder, because you're trying to speak without having built the proper foundation first. I see this all the time with learners who memorize a lot of vocabulary and grammar rules, but still struggle to understand native speakers or hold a natural conversation. The missing piece is almost always a lack of sufficient listening input. When you listen a lot, your brain starts to recognize patterns. You start to notice how sentences are structured. You begin to feel what sounds natural and what doesn't, even before you can explain the grammar rule behind it. This is so different from studying grammar rules consciously. When you listen enough, the grammar becomes intuitive. You just know that something sounds right or wrong, the same way native speakers do. Pronunciation is another huge reason why listening matters so much. Your ears need to hear the correct sounds of English repeatedly before your mouth can reproduce them accurately. If you don't listen enough, you'll end up pronouncing English using the sound patterns from your native language, because that's the only sound system your brain has been trained on. So, listening literally trains your ear to hear sounds that might not even exist in your native language. Over time, this dramatically improves your pronunciation and your listening comprehension at the same time. There's actually research in linguistics showing that babies can hear and distinguish sounds from any language in the world. But as they grow older and become surrounded by only one language, their brain narrows this ability down to only the sounds that matter for their native tongue. The good news is, this ability isn't completely lost as an adult. With enough focused listening practice, you can retrain your ear to pick up sounds and rhythms that weren't part of your native language growing up. Now, let's talk about something really practical. How do you actually practice listening effectively? The first and easiest method is simply listening to podcasts. Like this one. Choose content that matches your level. Not too easy, not too difficult. You want to understand most of it, but still be challenged a little. The second method is watching content on YouTube. Choose videos with topics you're genuinely interested in. When you're interested in the content, you naturally pay more attention, and your brain retains the language better. This is honestly one of the most underrated tips. So many learners force themselves to watch boring textbook-style videos because they think that's the correct way to study. But if you're bored, your brain isn't absorbing much at all. Find content about cooking, gaming, fashion, sports, whatever genuinely excites you. The learning happens naturally when you're engaged. Now here's a tip that I think is incredibly important. When you're listening, don't focus on memorizing individual words. Instead, focus on remembering and practicing phrases. Why phrases instead of words? Because that's how English is actually spoken. Native speakers don't think in individual words. They think in chunks, in phrases, in natural groupings of words that go together. For example, instead of memorizing the words at, the, and moment separately, you learn the full phrase at the moment as one single unit. This way, when you need to use it in conversation, it comes out naturally and quickly without you having to build the sentence word by word in your head. This phrase-based approach is actually one of the biggest secrets to sounding more fluent and natural in English. Whenever you hear a phrase that sounds useful or interesting, write it down as a whole phrase, not as separate words. Over time, you'll build a personal collection of natural expressions that you can use confidently. The third method, and this one is really powerful, is called shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a sentence and then immediately repeating it out loud, trying to copy the speaker's pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible. It's almost like becoming a shadow of the speaker, following right behind their voice. This technique trains your mouth muscles to produce English sounds correctly, while also training your ear to listen more precisely. Shadowing is honestly one of the most effective techniques for improving both your pronunciation and your speaking fluency at the same time. I actually want to dedicate an entire episode just to shadowing in more detail, because there's a proper method to do it well, and I don't want to rush through it today. So look out for that in an upcoming episode. For now, the most important takeaway is this: make listening your daily habit. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day of focused listening can completely transform your English over time. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Focus on understanding the overall meaning and let your brain gradually absorb the patterns naturally. This is a long-term process, but it's also the most reliable path to becoming a confident, natural English speaker. Be patient with yourself. Every minute of listening is building a foundation that will support everything else you learn later: speaking, writing, even your confidence in real conversations. All right, let's do a quick vocab recap before we finish today's episode. First word: acquire. Acquire means to gain or develop a skill or ability over time. For example, children acquire language naturally just by listening to the people around them. Next phrase: intuitive. Intuitive means understanding something naturally without having to think about it consciously. For example, after listening to English for a long time, grammar starts to feel intuitive. And our last word today: shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a sentence and immediately repeat it, copying the pronunciation and rhythm of the speaker. For example, I practice shadowing every day to improve my pronunciation. 3 really useful words connected to today's topic. Write them down and remember them. And that's a wrap for episode 8 of English Vibes. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode gave you a clearer understanding of why listening should be your first priority, and some practical methods to start practicing right away. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps our channel reach more English learners around the world. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode, including the upcoming deep dive into shadowing. I'll see you in the next one. Keep practicing every single day, and keep your English vibes going. Bye, everyone.